Welcome everyone, Dylan Jamili here today with a brand new video for you. So we are going to talk about blasting and cruising. So before we get into that, I have to remind you and reiterate that I am not a doctor. Anything that I give you here information-wise is for your entertainment purposes only. I am not insinuating, advising, nor telling you to run any of these things or use any of the things that I talk about. And what you do with this information and decide to use it for is completely and utterly up to you. So let's get into this concept of blasting and cruising. And excuse me if I'm not super enthused about this because I hate this concept. Why do I hate this concept, first and foremost, before I even explain it? Because I feel like it's abused, it's misused, it's misunderstood, and there are too many people out there that put it in other people's heads that this is the only way to make things work and that this is the end-all be-all, and that is completely and utterly false. Now, there are going to be some meatheads that come at me and yell at me and tell me I'm completely wrong, don't know what I'm talking about, and that's fine, completely fine. But the facts are the facts. You do not need to blast and cruise. You do not need to put your body under this, especially at a younger age, if you are not in medical need of staying on TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy, all year round. So what is the concept of blasting and cruising? Well, blasting and cruising is basically staying on steroids year round. All right, because testosterone is a steroid. It is the steroid. All steroids are derivatives from testosterone. So clearly testosterone is the steroid. Now, the concept is this. It's just basically like being on TRT. The difference is that you're blasting in between. So, what does that mean? Well, you're staying on a TRT dose of testosterone. Well, some people's definition of a TRT dose is like basically just being on cycle all year. TRT should not exceed 200 milligrams per week, and that, to be all and frankly honest with you, is extremely high unless you have a severe hypogonadal medical condition which would require that, which is very rare. There are some people out there that I've seen that have severe cases where their body is actually barely responding to testosterone replacement therapy, and they do need that higher dose. But generally 100 to 150 milligrams per week is what is more tolerable and widely accepted and better for you in the long run. So this concept of blasting and cruising is people that don't necessarily need testosterone replacement therapy still stay on all year long because they feel that using any sort of post-cycle therapy is wrecking them even further and not allowing them to make any sort of gains whatsoever from their cycles, which is completely false, but that's the thought and theory behind it. So what they do is they stay on this dose, say 100 to 50 milligrams per week, and then they blast, which means they run a cycle, whatever that may be. Let's just throw out something there. Let's just say they run tests, Primobolan and Winstrol, and they're running 14 weeks of test and Primobolan, 4 to 6 weeks of Winstrol within that cycle. So you run your cycle, so you'll raise your test dose more than likely. A lot of people tend to go with 500 milligrams, but whatever the case may be, whatever you raise it to, you're running your Primobolan at, 4 to 600 milligrams a week and Winstrol 50 milligrams a week. You run that 14 weeks. Then ideally, you're supposed to take 14 weeks off before you do another blast, and you would just drop your dose of testosterone back down to that 150 milligrams per week while stopping the other compounds, Primobolan and Winstrol. And that is, simply put, a blast and cruise. You cruising in this term is what TRT is. It's the same thing. There's not some kind of difference between blasting and cruising and TRT, except for the idea behind TRT is that you actually need it, and you're not necessarily blasting either. Most of the people that are on testosterone replacement therapy wouldn't have the slightest idea what blasting even meant or other steroid use until they got into it and really looked into it. They just think that they have a medical condition and they need to be on testosterone year round, and that's that. Now, there are the people on TRT that will blast, and it's the same thing. Like I said, the only difference is more often than not, the people that are blasting and cruising don't need to be on testosterone year-round. The thing that bothers me is that I see these guys that are in their early 20s or mid-20s that are doing this and have no clue what lies ahead. None. And honestly, at that age, I wouldn't be caring about it much either, because I wouldn't think or ever imagine that it would be an issue down the road, especially when I've got other people in my ear telling me that it won't be, which is completely and utterly false. Complete fabrication, complete lie. All right. The problem is there's a lot of guys out there, meathead specific, that encourage this. Tell guys that they cannot make gains without doing this, that this is the only way. Yeah, PCT is not the easiest thing in the world, and no, you're not going to keep 100% of your gains, but you're not going to on blasting and cruising either. All right, here's the main issue is people don't run a proper post-cycle-therapy. I made a whole video on how to properly run a full and extensive post-cycle, which will allow you for a quicker recovery, which then in turn allows for more keepable gains. You know, depending on the compounds you're running, that's also going to determine what kind of gains that you keep. D-ball gains are going to be much more difficult to keep than primobolan gains because of the compounds, because of the estrogen conversion and the water retention, and the water is not keepable. But you can still keep a lot from D-ball if you run it properly, and that means running the right dose, running your aromatase inhibitor correctly, and running a proper PCT, taking the proper amount of time off, and continuing to train hard and consistently along with your diet on and off cycle. This is something that people don't want to hear because they don't want to come to the realization that it comes down to staying consistent and disciplined and the hard work, and everybody wants a shortcut and wants instant gratification. And I'm sorry, because I love you guys, even the guys that have this bad mindset, because we're all in the same boat in terms of we all want to turn our bodies into the best possible thing we can. You know, we want to get the most out of our training, but the mindsets out there are not equal, and so many of them are just off base. So many of these mindsets go to this other realm, this other planet that is not here with the rest of us on Earth, and have this completely different idea of how things work. Look, it's your life. You make your decisions. Nobody tells you what to do but yourself, all right? That's up to you. I can't tell you what to do. All I can do is advise you what's good and what's bad and what can come. Look, I don't know everything. I'm not one of those guys that thinks they know everything that you can't tell me anything. But I do know this. I've been doing this, advising, coaching, studying, all of this for many, many years. I'm not some big meathead steroid user. I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not trying to gain 500 pounds. I'm an athlete, all right? There's a big difference between a bodybuilder and an athlete. They're both athletes. But bodybuilders, they have a different goal in mind. I'm not this big user, this big abuser, I think long term, and I'm not trying to be that big. But I know these compounds inside and out. I know body responses. I've worked with, I don't even know the amount of thousands of people I've worked with over a decade period. The numbers would astound you. I'm not trying to toot my horn. I'm telling you that I have real life experience here, so I know what comes and how many people that I have to deal with that have wrecked their bodies doing blasting and cruising, especially at a young age. That's what I'm trying to get at here. It's because I'm trying to save you from the problems that I've seen so many people go through, and people that oftentimes I can't even do anything for. And there's nothing anybody can do for them because it's too late. That's all I'm saying. I'm simply trying to protect you guys from yourselves and from others that are advising you to make these mistakes. So it is what it is. Just trying to help you in every possible way. That's blasting and cruising. People have been requesting this like crazy. So I wanted to get that out there for you. So I'm Dylan Gemelli, signing off.